This is my new BMW E36 and I'm gonna convert it to a Tracktool. I try to convert it and then drive on the Nürburgring maybe someday. So we're gonna transport the car now to our new workspace, so let's go. So we are driving with the E90 with the trailer with the E36 on the back, as you can see. Moet je daarin filmen? Geen langer. So let me introduce you to the new E36. I bought it without engine and transmission and also without interior. So it's a perfect base to build my Tracktool. I pushed the car inside and I started with removing the windows. It was a really hard job because I didn't have the right tools to do it, but it worked out, sort of. You see it in the next clip. So the car is inside. I've removed the windows in the meantime. As you can see, the front window didn't survive it, but that's a concern for later. I now have to remove the doors, so I have more room for the roll cage to build, and I've ordered some parts. I'm gonna show it in the video right now to weld in the roll cage. Next, I removed the doors. It was a pretty easy job, as you can see. Only 4 nuts and 1 pin for the door stopper, and the wiring loom was already loose. So now repeat this process on the other side and we are done. So this is the welder from HBM. It looks very good. It has a nice digital display with a lot of functions. So the first thing I'm gonna do is test it and see how everything works. I tested the welder and adjusted the settings to the tube that I'm going to be using on the roll cage. I'm really happy with how it welded. The next step was to weld 2 tubes together and see how that goes. But it turned out really good, so now it was time to weld in the roll cage. I marked the places down where I needed to cut to reach the subframe mountings. I removed the first layer of sheet metal because below that is the mounting of the subframe. The subframe has 4 points and I wanted the roll cage to connect to all 4 points for extra reinforcement. I've cleaned everything and now it's time to measure down how far this needs to be cut off. I've made the tubes the right size, as you can see. Now let's connect them and try to weld a frame for it. So I'm gonna spot weld the tubes right now to the place where they should be. So I have a measurement for the tubes that connect them all. I've cut out the materials on the tube. It did go pretty well. I'm now gonna make the frame in the car. So I have the first part in. It looks pretty good. Here I cleaned the tube for welding. I tack welded the second tube in. Another tube installed, 2 to go, and then we can fully weld it. I measured the last bits, notched the tubes to length and prepped them for welding. So I have the frame now tack welded in and now I'm going to take it out and weld it on the bench. I have the rear subframe mount loose and now I'm going to weld it completely and then weld it to the car. So I welded it completely. I made a small mistake because I had a too big of a gap between the tubes. So the welds aren't that pretty, but it works, so I'm happy with it. And for the first time it looks pretty good. Now I have to weld it in the car. So now I'm gonna clean up the spots where I wanna weld and then weld in the frame. So the first roll cage part is done.
the subframe reinforcement. It's welded in now, so we can focus on the next things. I'm now going to clean the spots where I've welded and then put anti-corrosion primer on it and put the top layer of the sheet metal back again where it's supposed to be. I started with spraying anti-corrosion primer on the places that I can't reach anymore when I put back the top layer of sheet metal. Then I started with welding the sheet metal layer back on. I don't have a video of the end result, but as you can see, it looks pretty good. The next thing was to remove the rear structure. I used an angle grinder to cut it out. It was a double layer, so I needed to cut on both sides, but that was no problem because it was pretty good accessible. So I've removed the rear structure, as you can see, everything is out. I'm now going to remove the remaining pieces of metal so it looks all clean again. I used an angle grinder as well to remove the last bits. It was a really time consuming job, but it's really worth it to make it as nice as possible. Next up was making the custom reinforcement plate for the rear shock tower. I made a cardboard template and then cut it out of metal. It fitted really good and then welded it on. So I got the rear shock absorbers reinforcement plates in. Looks pretty good, left and right. So I now need to order a tube that I want to place on here, like this, and then the tubes connect on this side.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
So I have to do that first, but in the meantime I'm going to start with making the reinforcement over here, just as I've already done on the other side. I prepped the metal for welding. I've made the templates from cardboard, as you can see. It's very important that it fits correctly, so it fits really nice. This one too. I'm now going to cut these out, this steel plate. So I marked the steel plate and started with cutting out the pieces. Then I tack welded and fully welded it to the car. It turned out really nice. Now it's time to make the front reinforcement. I started with a plate on the floor pan and then for extra reinforcement a plate on the side. And did the same on the other side. So the reinforcement plates are welded in left and right, so we can move on with the next things. So this is the tube where I was talking about. I want to place it up here, but I needed to remove the seam sealer first on both sides. So I started with doing that with an angle grinder again. Then I made a template from cardboard to replicate the tube, so it fits perfectly on the car. Then I marked down the tube and cut it to size. And then welded on the first side. After that I did the same on the other side. Cut down the tube again. And then welded fully on. The tubes are welded in. I sadly used a too small tube, so I had to weld on the seam sealer and that didn't go as planned, so I will do it different next time. I've welded the inside and the outside, so it should be good for now. I'm now going to make the tube that goes from left to the right to support the strut towers and then connect it with the subframe reinforcement. So I measured down the length of the tube, cut the tube to size, tack weld and checked if it's leveled, and then completely welded it. Now I measured the size of the tubes to connect to the subframe reinforcement and get the angle to the tube notcher. So I've got the left side in. I welded the tube in. Then it was time to make the other side. So it's welded in left and right, or left and right like this. If you're doing this yourself, a tip is to tack weld this tube in first and then make these and then weld it all together, because getting these between here, it's a really hard job. I had to cheat a little bit to make them fit, but it worked out. It looks very nice. Now I'm going to cut some of that tube to match it with this side. So I've shortened the tube off camera because the camera died. So the rear structure is done as well.
Now it's time for the main roll cage. I started with the main tube, cleaned everything up and then fitted it in the car. Cleaned some spots up in the car and then cut it to size and tack weld it in. You want to measure this very good, because if this tube is wrong, your whole roll cage is going to be wrong. So now it's time for the front left bar. I cleaned it up and then fitted it. It was a lot of measuring, adjusting to get it 100% right. Now it's time for the right side. The top piece is tack welded in, and I had to remove this piece because it was in the way, and then I can start with the side bars. Also tack welded in. This side is almost done. The last tube on this side. And now repeat everything on this side. This side also done, and now I'm going to weld everything what I can. I have these front shock tower reinforcement from AST roll cages. They fit really nice, so I'm going to clean everything up and then weld them in. So the first strut tower replacement is in. It looks really good and it fitted really well. So it was a pretty easy job to do. But the most important thing is to clean up everything really good. Otherwise you have bad welds that don't work as good. So now I'm removing some metal because I'm going to connect the front shock towers with the roll cage for extra stiffness. I'm making the tube over here, 2 tubes, bending it a little bit and then welding it in. So I got the tube in from the strut tower to the roll cage. As you can see, 2 tubes. And then it was time to weld the other side too. So this side is also in. Turned out pretty good. So now I'm going to grab a ratchet strap to pull that side to this side, so I can weld this completely good. So this is done. It's welded in. That is welded in. I now have these welded in on all 4 corners, there and there. The next thing I'm going to do is weld the X brace from there to there and there to there, and then connect the subframe to this tube and the rear shock tower also to this tube. The pieces are in and I think it looks really amazing. I'm really happy with how it turned out. So we are going to tighten this fender down so we can transport it to the cage builder again. The cage is for 90% done, as you can see.
It's for 90% done, but I'm missing some tubes. So we are going to the cage builder and let him bend some pieces. And then I can finish the roll cage. This professional stuff. This is the final piece. And it's ready.
Hey guys, now we're gonna drive the car to the anhänger. Now we're gonna go to the right. Now we do the car to the back. Now the car is getting tightened up.
So the car is tightened up on the trailer. Now we can go to the cage builder for the last pieces and then build the cage. So the car is back inside. I have a dashboard bar bended as well, so I can install that and then have some more small tubes. So let's start with welding in the dashboard bar. I had to remove this piece of metal to fit the bar in and then notch the tube to size and measure everything down. And then weld in these two tubes on both sides and then the cage is almost done. These are the final tubes on the roll cage on the left side and of course the right side. And then I finished off the roll cage with these gussets and the roll cage was finally done.
Can't look at me straight. I step up closer to the edge of her waist. Palm sweat, can't wait. She leans into me. Oh, yeah.
Thank you for watching this video. It was really fun to make this video and build the roll cage in. If you like this content, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And I'm going to see you in part 2.